Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Osasu Show. Our focus today is on the fundamental human rights of Nigerians, specifically in terms of journalism in the country. We'll be speaking to the country director of Amnesty International, who will be sharing her thoughts on the report recently launched by her organization on the endangered voices in our country. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back on the Osasu Show.
Early in the year, precisely in January, Amnesty International started a campaign called Freedom of Expression in Nigeria. And our goal when we started that campaign was to say that we understand that there has been continuous attack on freedom of expression in the country, particularly media freedom. And so we to kickstart a campaign that will be owned and driven by journalists and everyone who expresses opinion in the public space.
My name is Violet Agba, wife of Agba Jalingo, is a journalist. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I break down because I feel so pained. We now live in fear. We are threatened. My life is threatened. My business is threatened. My husband's life is threatened. My husband is a journalist. He just exposed a corruption of 500 million naira in the state, Cross River State. And instead of the governor to address the issue, he went to arrest him. He said 500 million naira is missing. 500 million naira that is meant for microfinance bank of Cross River State. What is happening to that money? He refused to address the issue. Came up to pick my husband, held my staff for 4 hours, hostage. We live in fear every day. We can't sleep. We can't do business. So my husband's business job is threatened, mine is threatened, our life is threatened. It says something, when freedom of speech is affected, other aspect is also affected. Freedom of movement, we are afraid of going out. I go out, I make sure I return before evening because I'm scared that somebody can just come and pick me up because of the way they picked my husband up.
My name is Chido Onuma. I'm a journalist, I'm an author, and I'm the coordinator of the African Center for Media and Information Literacy. I'd arrived the country on September 29 on a Sunday at about 4:15 on a Lufthansa Airways flight, went to pick up my bags. And as I picked up my bag, I was about to exit the airport. Somebody just stopped me and flashed his ID card and said, I'm from the DSS. We need you to follow us to our office. We got this report that some people were scared about the T-shirt you were wearing in the flight coming to Abuja. Obviously, maybe they had reported, and they said, because there was some planned protest or insurrection in Abuja, and you were coming into the country to be part of it. First of all, the inscription on my T-shirt is the title of my book. And I said, we are not interested in your book. It's the T-shirt we're interested. I've been wearing this T-shirt for 3.5 years, since the book was first launched in May 2016. He said, are you sure? Where do you wear it to? I wear it to the office. Every Friday, the T-shirt is like my default casual uniform, a pair of jeans and a T-shirt. Anyway, they didn't want to hear any of that. Their interest was that I had to. So the guy just got to the chase and said, well, the only condition we'll let you go is that you have to submit the T-shirt and write an undertaking that you will never, ever wear the T-shirt again. Quickly, the lessons here is that we live in a climate of fear. But that's not what should concern us. What should concern us is what we're doing about it. So it seems, and I've said this repeatedly, that we've moved from the era of what you say or write on social media to now what you're wearing. Who knows what's next? Perhaps what you're thinking. Somebody could actually stop you on the road or come to your office and say, you are thinking this, you're planning this, and you will be the one to prove to them that you are not thinking what they think you are thinking.
Welcome back. Joining me right now is the country director of Amnesty International, Mrs. Osai Ojigo. Thank you so much for joining us on today's program.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I was at the launch of this recent report released by your organization, Amnesty International, Endangered Voices Attack on Freedom of Expression in Nigeria. You documented the story about 19 journalists who have been attacked or persecuted due to expressing their fundamental human rights. Talk to me more about this and what your aims and objective of this report is.
Thanks so much. The report actually covers a lot of work. We've been seeing a pattern emerging in our work documenting human rights. And so one of the things that struck us was that what's happening within the journalistic space. And then in the process of investigating that, we now found out that there were also other people who are not necessarily journalists or professional media practitioners like bloggers who are also experiencing a wave of attacks by security agents. So we decided to delve deeper into the issue and interrogate it. And this led to us launching a campaign at the in early 2019 in January called the Freedom of Expression Campaign in order to let journalists know you have rights. This right is protected by the Constitution, by international law, and also international human rights standards. And it's important that you should speak out about the issues you're experiencing. So that was what led now, that's what led now to a number of cases that came to our attention. Some we had been working on a few years earlier, but then in 2019, we were amazed by the amount of people who had been attacked. So even the briefing just barely has a few of those cases that came to our attention. The purpose was merely to show the pattern, that this is a slow but clearly emerging trend, that if you dissent, if you give an alternative or an opposition view, you are likely to be attacked, and by people who have the apparatus of state in order to clamp down. And then we also see another pattern in terms of the methods and the laws they are using. Many years ago, if a journalist, for example, were to say something that someone is not happy about, they can accuse them of libel or defamation, and then they go to court for that. But now we are seeing people being accused of cyber crimes, terrorism, kidnapping, advance fee fraud, and in some cases, even theft of government property, all in a bid to criminalize them as a result of the work they do, or for sharing information online, or even for expressing their opinions even within private Facebook pages. So this is a dangerous trend, because when you look at freedom of expression, it's fundamental. It's one of the first 4 freedoms that was promoted by President Roosevelt when he gave his 4 freedoms speech. And so it means that it's fundamental to the enjoyment of other rights. And we hope that this briefing will throw a bit more light to the situation and get the government to act, but most importantly, raise awareness in the public. Because if journalists, bloggers, media practitioners are not able to share the information, the facts that they get, then the public would not have any news.
You mentioned, yes.
Watching.
Okay. You mentioned getting the government to act, but the government also seems like the perpetrator of most of this breach against journalists. So how do you hold the government to account while bringing out this report that is clearly against the government?
So every government under international law has agreed to abide by certain obligations. And so ultimately it's the government that has to show to the international community that they are doing everything possible to entrench human rights in their country. And in our reports, you'll notice that many of it involves agents of government. So it's a call on the government to call their agents to order, whether it's at state level or at federal level. You would also find that some of the cases we have are individuals who are in positions of power, and so it's also cases of abuse of power. And in the process, they are also abusing human rights. So all in all, government as a collective has a responsibility to ensure it cleans up its own system, but most importantly to uphold human rights, regardless of who is involved.
But I guess a more coherent way of putting that question is, how do we hold ourselves accountable? How does government hold itself accountable? So if we go through your report and we see that at the federal, at the state, at the local government, that government, those in the position of power, are the ones perpetuating this breach of human rights on its citizens, how then do you call, as a body, Amnesty International, how then do you call them to hold themselves accountable? Is that realistic?
The best way in which this can be addressed, for example, is that there are various forums where the government, at state level, for example, governors meet. And so it means that when these cases are presented, they have to hold the high moral ground to call themselves to order. There needs to be peer pressure at that level. Ultimately, the people that are affected are your constituencies as well. And so the constituents are saying that our lives are threatened, we're afraid to speak, we cannot do anything that we would wish to, online or offline, because we are afraid that we'll be arrested, detained, or tortured. And so within government, there are different layers. There's the judiciary, the executive, the legislative. If the constituents are also able to appeal to their representatives in the National Assembly, this is what's happening in our state, we need to do a bit more. There'll be more awareness raising. The judiciary also is there to ensure that there's law and order. Interestingly, what we are seeing is that the government actors are quick to go to court to accuse people of committing crimes and asking the court to hold them indefinitely and even to charge them with heinous crimes, but are very slow to also enforce the same judgments when they say, okay, this is wrong, you need to pay compensation, as you'll find in our report, where Jones Abiri won 10.5 million naira damages against the DSS, and it hasn't been paid yet. And then the proprietor of Breeze FM in Nasarawa State also won damages to the tune of over 67 million naira, and it's yet to be paid. So we are saying that the rule of law must be entrenched. Everyone should respect it. And the only way we can have a sustainable society is if the rule of law applies regardless of your position or status in society. We can't do it in isolation, and then collectively the state governments, the federal government should be able to say, look, we want Nigeria to be a country that respects human rights, a country where law and order strives, and these reports should make them reflect internally in terms of how they respond to these issues. What would have expected them to do, even in terms of some of the cases that are highlighted, is to check and say, okay, so someone said something that you did not like. What are the other ways through which we can address it? Rather than using force, intimidation, in order to silence them. Because in that process, you never really find out the truth, if you are really interested in finding out the truth. And in cases where even people are working to push for real society good, like cases of corruption, it's important, like in Jafar's case, for example, that we look at it holistically and investigate all the claims, rather than say that because the person has made this allegation, they were going to clamor the entire state resources to keep him in his place. So all in all, it's about live and let live, but most importantly, recognizing that when someone's rights is infringed today, it could be yours tomorrow, and it should be a collective effort to make sure everybody's rights are respected.
As you rightly said, Mrs. Ojigo, when I look through this report, I see that the court has awarded certain compensation to some of these victims. However, it's not been paid, it's not been adhered to. So in a society where the rule of law is flaunted, court orders are disregarded, national security, as some certain people in government have said, supersedes the rule of law, supersedes the Constitution. Where do we go from here? And Would you understand from the perspective of everyday Nigerians that it's hard to feel hopeful in the face of a report like this? We just see it as, just another document. Mm-hmm. Would things actually change?
It's the misinterpretation of the law that is actually creating this confusion. So when they say, okay, security supersedes any human rights anyone has, rights are not absolute, like in the case of freedom of expression. But even the limitations need to be within the confines of the law. It needs to be reasonable. It needs to, whatever measures that are placed needs to be proportionate to the effect the government wants to take. So you cannot just remove someone's human rights, because that's something that is inherent. You can't take away someone's human rights. You can limit it in certain aspects because you want to address certain ills, but it cannot be indefinite and it cannot be permanent. So in response to those who feel, okay, this keeps happening, it's going to get worse, you cannot give up hope, because there are 190 million people who are seeking a better life. And for us to have a better life, we all need to recognize that everyone's rights is important. Because there's a dangerous slope where you feel that, okay, this doesn't concern me right now. It's not affecting me directly. Tomorrow, it might be your case. Human rights should be something that is not negotiable under any circumstance. And that is the message that we really want to sell with this report. Everyone's human rights is important. Because we're in a lawful society, we can find ways in which we can improve how we communicate, how we disseminate. Intimidation, threatening, trying to block someone else from expressing themselves within the confines of the law should not be tolerated.
Do not give up hope. Press for freedom. That's a fine place to leave it.
Thank you so much,
Madam. We'll take a short break right now. When we return, we'll go into the streets and ask everyday Nigerians their thoughts, their reactions on this subject matter. Don't go anywhere.
The issue of press freedom is something that every democratic government should uphold, okay? The arrest of pressmen and journalists across the country is not something that we're proud about in Nigeria. And I think that the government should allow the press to do their job. But also, as the press is doing her job, there should be a limit to where you will go, all right? So if the press is doing her job within the law, I don't think that the government should go after them, because there's what is called press freedom in every country. And I think Nigeria is one of those countries that is exercising that. So we should uphold that. From the information I gathered, that over 19 journalists and press personnel have been arrested in Nigeria by the government. I think it's something that as Nigerians we should cry out about, because the previous government also had press people, but we didn't see any case of arrest of several pressmen. They were given room to express, to talk about the economy and things that are happening. Of course, it's their job. So for the government, to start arresting pressmen across the country, I think it's something that we should be worried about as Nigerians, and we should stand up and speak up against that, basically.
Well, for me, I would say this is where we now know that freedom of speech, Nigeria is not really practicing democracy. Because if it's a country where democracy really, really works, it shouldn't be an issue when people should voice out how they feel, how they are being treated. But on the contrary, Nigeria is not that. It's not showing that kind of concern. And I think it has led to a lot of things. The citizens are afraid and nobody is free to voice out how they feel. So to me, I don't feel happy about it.
Nigeria is sitting on secrets, and we must dig them out now. And the fact diggers are journalists, so they should respect that. Even though it's not a good thing, but they should respect it, because they are the unchanged society. Everything depends on them. They feed the masses, so they go out there to source information. And you are dealing with very, very fierce system.
I have the right to my opinion. And even though I know the law also, the Constitution gives us to the extent in which you can have your freedom of expression as long as you are not damaging the image of another person. If it's not libelous and things like that, I don't think you should suppress anybody's freedom of expression. Let people say their minds. Everybody cannot support you. Everybody cannot be on your side. So even out of the negativity of people's comments about you, then you even pick your fault and you rectify things.
I think, in my own view, that is very wrong. Why? This means you are suppressing the real meaning or the real intendment of the Freedom of Information Act, which have been passed now. So people have the right to express themselves. Journalism is one of the ways you can communicate the policies of governments, how they're executing it to the masses. Okay? Through either radio journalism, through print media, and the rest of all that. So that is the way of making it in such a way that people understand what's happening. So when people express their minds and the authorities hold them and incarcerate them, it means you are stifling the real intent of that freedom of information bill, and that becomes a problem. Freedom of press is always attacked. You can take that back to the days of Martin Luther King and the others, freedom fighters. Okay? Press is key in every government, but a tyranny or a tyrant government will not want press. Okay? So democracy welcomes press, but I'm confused back to Nigeria about the tag. So I don't know whether what we are running is democracy or tyranny. I don't know. So
the normal Nigerian can join the movement in several ways, just like as I'm doing now, airing my own opinion and my voice. But in any way at all you want to go about it, I think I suggest you do it peacefully. We are in an organized and democratic society. I feel there are ways and procedures in doing everything. So if we have to go about it, we lend our voice. We organize ourselves in such a manner that will send strong signal to our government. That's my position.
First of all, let the people know that there's an attack on journalists. Make them understand the importance of journalists in society, and then you begin to talk them into a forum that could lead to a movement that will actually make it known that journalists are not safe in the society. It could be a demonstration, a peaceful one. Let the federal government know. Let NBC knows about it, that journalists are under attack, and then they can now negotiate with the government on the right and protection of journalists in the society.
That's it for today's program. Don't forget, our symposium is just a few days away. Visit our website, www.tostvnetwork.com, to sign up. The theme, the 21st Century Woman and Her Role in National Development. Follow us on social media at The Osasu Show, at TOSTV Network, at Osasu Igbenedion, and at The Osasu Show Foundation on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. To read news on sustainable development and current affairs across Africa, you could also visit our website, tostvnetwork.com. For my personal opinions and articles, you can visit my website, osasuigbenedion.com. I'll see you same time, same place next week, and until then, take very good care of yourself. God bless you.